Okay, so let's maybe chat about a specific bit from Dr. Darren Cannell's book, Coaching Sports to Internet Brats. We're zeroing in on the author's notes section.
Right, and this isn't just, random thoughts. This guy has some serious background.
Totally. 31 years teaching, over 30 coaching, 13 years post-secondary education. I mean, that's a lot of perspective.
It really is. And what grabs you right away, I think, is his honesty.
Yeah.
Well, he basically says, after all that time, he feels like he has more questions than answers about coaching kids these days.
Huh. That's quite the admission, isn't it? Especially with that resume.
Exactly. It kind of tells you straight up that things feel different now, even to him. The old ways might not fully apply anymore. He's grappling with it.
So our plan here is to sort of unpack why he feels that way. Let's dig into his observations, the questions he's raising about, the internet generation and sports.
And what coaches might be able to take away from his thoughts. Sounds good.
Okay, so he kicks off talking about something you hear all the time, right? Researchers, coaches saying today's youth are just different than 30 years back.
Yeah, and often not in a good way, supposedly. The common complaints are like they lack fitness, respect, maybe dedication.
Yeah.
Attention span always comes up.
Always. And you feel the frustration he mentions from coaches, like they're hitting a wall trying to motivate kids like they used to.
Mm-hmm. And guess what gets the blame?
Let me guess.
The internet.
Bingo, phones, video games, just hours online. It's the easy target for why kids might seem different or lacking.
But Cannell has this kind of unique angle, doesn't he? Because he wasn't just watching this happen.
Right. He actually spent, 14 years of his teaching career working directly with high schools and online tech. Even set up a big online high school.
So he's seen both sides. He's been in the digital trenches, so to speak.
Yeah, which lends weight to his conclusion. He talks about a definite allure of internet gaming and the instant gratification of anonymous feedback.
Anonymous feedback, interesting point. And he feels this whole ecosystem has really changed the focus of society. Not just kids, but everyone.
So it's less about kids being broken, maybe, and more about the environment shifting the rewards and where focus goes.
That seems to be his angle, which leads him to this big comparison he makes. The core difference he sees pre- and post-internet athletes. It's about that instant gratification.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Well, think about games, apps, social media. He says, everything is designed to give the users a response with little effort and little time. Click, get a like, do something in a game, get points, immediate feedback.
Right, instantly if you did the right thing in the game's context.
Exactly. Now compare that to sports. As he puts it, the gratification and feedback is not as quick or as instantaneous.
Yeah, definitely not. You practice a serve for weeks, maybe months, just to get a little better, and you might fail publicly loads of times first.
Right. The reward system is just slower, more demanding, less certain, maybe.
So that connects back to the focus thing, the idea that kids today supposedly lack it.
Yeah, he pushes back on that directly. He says, just watch a 14-year-old boy working through the levels of a computer game.
Huh. Good point.
He notes the sheer number of skills, the complexity in some games could be massive, even more complex than, say, learning to serve a volleyball.
So the question isn't if they can focus, but maybe what their focus is tuned into and how it's rewarded.
Precisely. And that brings him to game design. It's not accidental how engaging games are.
Right. He mentions it's based on a lot of science and research.
Very deliberately structured. Start simple, build complexity bit by bit, and crucially, reward the player at each level achieved. Constant positive reinforcement for progressing.
Okay, I see the parallel he's drawing with sports. He says, real active sports work the same way.
In principle, yeah. Beginner volleyball, simple bumps. Then sets, spikes, strategy. Skills build in complexity. The learning path is similar. A big but. The key difference is, games offer safer instant feedback and gratification. Fail in a game? Who cares? Hit restart. Maybe nobody even sees.
But sports are not safe like that. You're out there in front of peers. The feedback isn't instant. Gratification is delayed.
And the challenges aren't perfectly calibrated like game levels often are. Sports are sloppy. Your attempts aren't digitally controlled. You shank a pass, no undo button.
And this leads to his point about how games actually coach players.
Yeah, he argues most digital games do a good job of coaching a player to incrementally learn progressively more difficult skills to achieve success. Think tutorials, gradual challenges.
Okay, and that's the exact challenge for a coach.
That's what he says. It's the identical challenge that each coach have to try to create in their practices.
Yeah.
How do you replicate that effective, incremental, rewarded learning from games?
But without the digital perfection.
Exactly. The coach has, 12 players, all potentially at different skill level. You don't have that ultimate complete control a game designer has. It's messy.
That's a real puzzle for coaches then. How do you translate those successful digital learning ideas into a muddy field or a noisy gym with real variable kids?
It's a core question he seems to be wrestling with. And it links to another common observation he mentions.
Which is?
Coaches saying today's players just do not come to practices with the same skills as kids did before the internet really dominated childhood.
Like fundamental movement skills.
Yeah. His reasoning is that pre-internet kids spent way more time in unorganized play, just messing about outside, running, jumping, climbing, tag, stuff that builds body awareness naturally.
Less of that happens now, maybe. More structured activities or screen time.
That's the implication. And he thinks it's not an unfair assessment that today's players might lack some of those basic movement patterns, might not be as aware of what their body can do.
So what's the coaching takeaway there?
Pretty direct, he suggests that coaching of sports must include the basics of movement at a greater level than was done 30 years ago.
So you can't assume kids have that foundation. You might need to actively teach running mechanics, jumping, landing, spatial awareness.
Seems so. Building that physical literacy might have to be an explicit part of coaching now, not just assumed.
Okay, so instead of just complaining about the internet, he's suggesting coaches should actually look at it, or at least at digital games.
Yeah, he proposes studying them could offer a modern approach to reaching the internet brats.
Yeah.
Learn from what works there.
And coaches do have tools now they didn't have back then, right?
Absolutely. He mentions the connected world gives access to the greatest sports coaches via video and the internet. There's so much knowledge available on how to teach effectively.
So, pulling it together, what are some concrete suggestions he takes from looking at games?
He lists a few practical ones. First, change drills often, keep things fresh, maybe cater to shorter attention spans, or just the desire for novelty seen in games.
Okay, fight the monotony. What else?
Give lots of feedback.
Yeah.
Echoing that instant response loop. Not necessarily praise, but clear, frequent information on performance.
Makes sense. Keep them engaged, let them know where they stand.
Third, plan the steps of skill development in a logical method. Like game levels, break things down. Ensure progression makes sense, step by step.
Build success incrementally.
Right. And finally, try to create as safe an environment as possible for athletes to learn the game.
Safe how?
Safe to fail. Reduce that fear of messing up in front of everyone, which is way higher stakes than failing privately in a game. Make practice a space for trying things, making mistakes, without harsh judgment.
So these seem like practical bridges, maybe? Ways to connect with how this generation learns and processes information, but within a sports context.
I think that's the idea. Adapting the methods without losing the core values of sport.
And woven into all this, he shares some of his own stronger opinions, right, about society.
Yeah. He touches on his elite academy, his views on the everyone gets a ribbon thing, overprotective parents, entitlement.
And that motto he dislikes. If at first you don't succeed, quit.
Yeah, quit and try something else. Don't waste your time. He clearly pushes back hard against that mindset.
And you can see how that contrasts sharply with the inherent struggle and delayed gratification in sports that he values.
Definitely. It all feeds into his core belief, which comes back to that initial humility. The more he learned, the more he realized how little I actually knew.
And that real learning, real value comes from?
From doing, by failing and being allowed to fail. He strongly believes the amount of effort and time it has taken to earn something is directly proportional to its value. That's almost the polar opposite of instant gratification culture.
So, stepping back from these notes, what's the big picture takeaway?
Well, I think it's that the internet age has produced different athletes, but maybe not worse or deficient athletes, just different, shaped by different inputs, different reward structures.
And the challenge for coaches isn't just to complain about that difference.
Right. Cannell's insight is urging coaches to understand why the digital world is so engaging, the incremental learning, feedback loops, safe failure, and to thoughtfully adapt those principles for the sports environment.
It's about meeting the players where they are, adapting the coaching to them, rather than just expecting them to conform to older models.
Exactly. Which loops back to his point about questions. There's no single magic answer.
Yeah, it leaves you with that thought he shares. What works for me or you or others in life will differ based on the situation, past experience, and a plethora of other factors. So, considering everything he's observed about this changing landscape, how does that idea apply to you, the listener, finding the right coaching approach? How do you blend these insights about the digital age with the enduring values of sport for the specific athletes you work with?
But that's the ongoing question, isn't it? Worth thinking about.